The Galactic Council sat in tense silence as the message from Earth flashed on their screens. The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of an undeniable truth. The peace talks, which had been going on for months, were over. Without warning, Earth's representative stood up, a calm yet resolute expression on their face. "We have decided to walk away," they said. The room fell into chaos as the council members, who had been expecting negotiations to continue, were left in stunned disbelief. For years, the council had believed that Earth was a peaceful species, one that could be reasoned with. The humans had always avoided conflict, preferring dialogue over force. Their representatives had often spoken of the value of peace, of diplomacy, and cooperation. It had been their main selling point in the eyes of the other species. Yet now, Earth was turning its back on all of that. "What do you mean, you're walking away?" demanded one of the council leaders, his voice sharp. "This is a galactic summit. The future of our alliance depends on this agreement." The human representative, a woman with short dark hair and a stern gaze, met his gaze without hesitation. "We've heard enough," she replied simply. "We've seen your true intentions, and we no longer believe you. Peace talks are over." The room erupted into murmurs of disbelief, then anger. The other species in the room, who had been carefully negotiating terms for the past few months, exchanged confused and worried looks. How could Earth, of all places, just give up on the peace they had worked so hard to achieve? "How dare you?" another alien leader shouted. "This isn't just about you. This affects the entire galaxy." "Exactly," the human representative responded, "which is why we're leaving. You've shown us your true face, and we can't trust you anymore." She turned and walked out of the room, her footsteps echoing in the now deafening silence. Back on Earth, the decision was not met with the shock that had rippled across the galaxy. Instead, there was an air of quiet resolution. The leaders of Earth had known this moment would come. They had known that the Galactic Council, with its many species and conflicting interests, was not a true ally. For decades, humanity had worked with them, tried to build relationships, and even joined their efforts in defending the galaxy from outside threats. But in the end, they had learned that peace could not be built on lies, and it certainly could not be built on the fragile promises of those who had never truly cared about them. "Prepare the fleet," Earth's highest military commander ordered. "It's time we remind them what Earth is truly capable of." Back in the council chambers, the reality of Earth's departure began to sink in. The room buzzed with frantic whispers, but no one knew what to do. The human species had never been seen as a major threat. They were small compared to the larger and more powerful species in the galaxy. Their technology, while impressive, had always been considered primitive in comparison to the advanced weaponry and vast fleets of the Council. Yet, something about this moment felt different. The humans had made their choice, and it was a choice that terrified the Council more than they were willing to admit. In the days that followed, rumors began to spread. The Galactic Council began to receive reports from their spies stationed on Earth. The humans were not simply preparing to return to their homeworld and forget about the galaxy. They were preparing for war. Across the stars, the other species watched in confusion and concern. Earth had always been seen as a peaceful, benevolent species, and the idea that they would turn to violence seemed impossible. Yet the evidence was clear. Military activity on Earth was increasing at an alarming rate. New ships, previously unheard of, were being built in secret, and the humans were no longer hiding their intentions. The Council, once certain that they could handle any threat, now found themselves questioning everything. What had happened to the peaceful humans they had known? Had their society always been this powerful, or had they just been hiding their true capabilities all along? As the days turned to weeks, the fear began to grow. The Council called an emergency meeting, summoning their most senior members to discuss the growing threat of Earth. They had to make a decision. Should they attempt to stop humanity's military buildup before it was too late, or should they try to negotiate a new peace deal with Earth? But deep down, the Council knew that the humans had made their choice. The peace talks were over. Earth had walked away. "We need to act," one of the council leaders said, his voice trembling with uncertainty. "We can't let them grow stronger. If they are preparing for war, we must stop them now before it's too late." The other leaders nodded, though none of them looked confident. They all knew the risks. Earth's military might not be as vast as the Council's fleets, but the humans had one thing that the Council could not underestimate: their determination. Earth had fought wars in the past, survived through the harshest conditions, and come out on top. They were a resilient species, and now they were ready to fight for something they had lost: trust. As the meeting ended, a sense of foreboding hung in the air. No one knew what the next steps would be, but one thing was certain: the galaxy was about to change. Earth had walked away from peace talks, and the consequences of that decision would echo throughout the stars. Back on Earth, humanity's leaders were preparing for a fight they hoped would never come. They knew the galaxy would not forgive them for turning away from peace, but they also knew it was the only way forward. Trust had been broken, and once that was done, there could be no return. The galaxy would either have to learn to respect humanity, or it would face the full force of Earth's wrath. The Council had thought they had everything under control, but now they were about to learn that the humans were not as easy to control as they had believed. The worst part of all: the humans had only just begun to show their true power. The news spread quickly throughout the galaxy, and fear began to settle into the hearts of every species that had once thought Earth was a weak, peaceful planet. The Galactic Council, whose members had always viewed Earth as little more than a small, insignificant piece of the puzzle, now found themselves in a state of deep worry. Their spies had been monitoring Earth's activities closely, and the reports were becoming more and more alarming. Humanity, it seemed, was not going to sit idly by. The ships they had built were not just defense ships. No, these ships were designed for war. Massive, heavily armed, and deadly, they were the kind of vessels the galaxy had never associated with Earth. The Council had hoped that Earth would back down. They had hoped that, like in the past, the humans would eventually bow to the pressure of diplomacy. But as the days passed, they realized that Earth was not going to back down. The humans had made their decision, and there was no turning back. Inside the Galactic Council's chambers, tension was high. The Council members debated furiously about how to respond. Some argued that they should try to salvage the peace talks, to reach out to Earth one more time. Others, however, were far less optimistic. They argued that the humans had already shown their true colors, and that a harsh response was needed. The idea of an all-out war with Earth was something none of them had ever considered, and the fear of that conflict was evident in the room. "Earth must be stopped," one leader said, his voice heavy with dread. "They've been building ships in secret for months now. If they're preparing for war, we can't afford to waste any time." Another leader, a hulking creature with 6 arms, spoke up. "We can't underestimate them. We've seen their power before, on a small scale. But this is different. Earth's been hiding something, and I believe they've been preparing for this moment for a long time." The Council's most experienced general, a creature known for its calm demeanor and razor-sharp strategies, stood and addressed the room. "If we move too quickly, we could push Earth to do something we'll regret. We need a strategy, not just an attack." But as the conversation went on, there was an underlying sense that no one truly knew what to do. Earth's sudden shift from peaceful negotiators to potential enemies was a shock no one had expected. It was one thing for a species to declare war, but it was another to know how to deal with a species that had been hiding its true potential for so long. Meanwhile, back on Earth, things were moving quickly. The leaders of Earth had already made their plans. The military was in full mobilization, preparing for the possibility that the Galactic Council would strike first. General Lara Michaels, the leader of Earth's defense forces, paced back and forth in the war room. The monitors on the wall displayed real-time reports of the fleet's movements. She had always been a calm, calculating leader, but today her mind was racing, What would happen when the Council finally responded? Would they really try to invade Earth? A young officer walked into the room with urgent news. General Michaels, we've detected movement in the outer sectors. The Council's fleet is mobilizing. They're coming. Lara turned to face the officer. Her eyes narrowed. How soon? Within days, Mom. She sighed, already knowing the answer. The Council wouldn't waste any time. Earth had taken a step that they couldn't undo, and now the galaxy's most powerful alliance was going to make its move. The question was, could Earth hold its ground? Lara knew that Earth's fleet, though formidable, was still small compared to the massive fleets of the Galactic Council. However, there was one thing that made Earth's military stand apart from the rest of the galaxy. The humans had a determination like no other. They had fought their way through wars in the past and had survived against seemingly insurmountable odds. The technology they had developed in secret was now a force that the Council had no way of understanding, and that was exactly what they were counting on. "Get me Commander Briggs," Lara ordered, her voice sharp. The officer nodded and quickly left to carry out the command. Commander Briggs, the leader of Earth's most advanced warship fleet, arrived within moments. His face was grim, but there was a fire in his eyes. "General Michaels," he said, nodding respectfully. Lara didn't waste any time. "The Council is coming. We don't have long to prepare. Are we ready?" Briggs nodded, a smirk creeping onto his face. "They won't know what hit them. We've got more than just firepower. We've got something they'll never understand. Earth's been hiding its true strength for too long, and now it's time to show them." Lara's eyes met his, and for a moment, there was no need for further words. They both knew what was at stake. The humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their place in the galaxy. They would show the Council that Earth was not to be underestimated. As the days passed, the tension grew. Every monitor on Earth's military stations flickered with updates. Earth's ships were ready, the crew trained, and the final touches were being made on a new weapon that would send a clear message to the Council. Humanity would not be cowed. The Galactic Council, meanwhile, continued to prepare for their assault. They had never seen a fleet like Earth's before, but they assumed it was just an illusion of strength. They believed that a quick strike would break the human spirit. They had no idea how wrong they were. As the two sides prepared to clash, the galaxy held its breath. Would Earth survive the coming storm, or would the Galactic Council crush them beneath its might? The countdown had begun, and there was no turning back now. The first shots would be fired soon, and both sides knew that nothing would ever be the same again. In the final moments before the clash, General Michaels stood before her fleet, looking out at the vastness of space. Her voice was steady as she gave the command. "Let's show them what Earth is truly made of." The fleet moved into position, ready to face the most powerful force the galaxy had ever known. The first strike was about to begin. The silence in the war room was deafening as General Lara Michaels watched the final countdown tick away on the display. The hum of machinery, the clicking of fingers on consoles, the whispers of nervous officers, all of it seemed to fade into the background as she focused entirely on the task at hand. Earth's future was on the line, and every second that passed brought them closer to the most crucial battle they had ever faced. Her hand rested on the command chair, and she took a slow, deep breath, steadying herself. It was strange, almost surreal, to think that just days ago, Earth's leaders had been sitting at peace talks, attempting to negotiate with the Galactic Council. Now, humanity was about to engage in a war that could change everything. There was no going back, no hope of finding common ground with the Council. They had shown their true colors, and now humanity would show them what it meant to cross the line. "All systems are online, General," Commander Briggs' voice cut through her thoughts, bringing her back to the present. Lara nodded without turning her head. "Prepare the fleet. Keep everything on high alert. The Council won't expect us to fight back like this. They think we're weak. Let's show them how wrong they are." Briggs paused for a moment, then spoke with a touch of pride in his voice. "The fleet's ready, General. Our new weapons are active. They won't know what hit them." Lara turned her gaze toward the vast holographic map that displayed Earth's military position. The fleet was vast, but more importantly, it was prepared. The advanced ships they had developed in secret for years had been outfitted with technologies the Council would never have seen coming. The humans might not have the sheer numbers to compete with the Council's massive war machines, but they didn't need to. Their strength had always been in their adaptability, their resourcefulness, and above all, their unyielding spirit. The seconds ticked away, and the tension in the room grew palpable. Every officer, every crew member aboard the ship scattered across the vast expanse of space was waiting for the signal, ready to launch into the unknown. They knew that one misstep could doom them. The Council wouldn't hesitate to wipe them out if given the chance. "Sir, the Council fleet is approaching," one of the tactical officers said, her voice tense with urgency. "They're almost within range. They haven't detected us yet. Should we initiate preemptive strikes?" Lara thought for a moment, her mind running through all the possibilities. Preemptive strikes were tempting, but a poorly timed attack could throw them into chaos. They needed to maintain the element of surprise. Earth's greatest weapon wasn't just their advanced technology. It was their ability to turn the tables when the odds were stacked against them. "No," Lara said, her voice calm but firm. "We'll wait. We let them make the first move. We need them to think they're in control." The officers exchanged uncertain glances, but none questioned her orders. They had trained for this moment for years, and if they trusted anything, it was their commander's instincts. The minutes stretched out like hours, the air growing heavier with each passing moment. Then, finally, the moment arrived. The first ships of the Council's fleet came into view on the display. Vast, monstrous, and towering with weapons that could annihilate entire planets with a single blow, the fleet was everything the Council had promised it would be. But it was also everything the Council had underestimated about Earth. The enemy ships moved into position, and the Council's commanders no doubt believed they had the upper hand. They had no idea that they were walking straight into a trap. Humanity's ships, small by comparison but far more agile, surrounded the Council's fleet in a seemingly random pattern. On the surface, it appeared to be a disorganized mess, but beneath the chaos, there was a precision to their movements, a strategy they had refined over years of preparation. "Now," Lara whispered, barely audible to anyone else in the room. The first wave of fire came from Earth's ships, a barrage of energy blasts and missiles, not all aimed with precision, but enough to catch the enemy off guard. The Council's commanders scrambled to react, expecting the hit-and-run tactic, not the full-scale assault that followed. Lara's eyes flicked across the screen as Earth's fleet erupted into motion. Ships twisted and turned, dodging incoming fire with remarkable agility. The precision of the humans' movements seemed impossible to the Council, whose fleets were built for brute force, not speed and cunning. Earth's vessels were fast, their technology designed for unpredictability, and now it was their greatest advantage. "Brace for impact," came a shout from the communications officer as a Council warship launched a retaliatory strike. The shot collided with one of Earth's smaller vessels, but it didn't explode as expected. Instead, it absorbed the energy, deflecting much of the force with a newly developed energy shield. Lara felt a sense of grim satisfaction. It worked. The new shielding technology they had developed in secret was holding up against the Council's most advanced weaponry. The Council hadn't expected that Earth would have such tech, but now they were learning the hard way. Another salvo of missiles launched from Earth's fleet, slamming into the side of a Council dreadnought. The mighty warship groaned under the assault, but instead of breaking apart, it began to stumble, unable to maneuver properly. The humans had done it. They had just disabled one of the Council's flagship ships with a single strike. The first wave of destruction had begun, but Earth's fleet wasn't done yet. The Council ships, though powerful, began to fall into disarray. They had no idea how to fight back against the unpredictable nature of Earth's tactics. Each of Earth's ships moved as a single coordinated unit, firing in waves that seemed to come from every direction. The Council's officers were used to facing opponents that followed traditional rules of battle, but humanity was rewriting those rules in real time. "Keep up the pressure," Lara ordered, her voice steady but filled with the weight of responsibility. "We cannot let them regroup." Her orders were carried out without question, and the battle raged on. On the Council's flagship, a commander stood in stunned silence, watching as his forces began to crumble. Earth was not fighting like anyone he had ever faced. Their ships were everywhere, darting in and out of the shadows, too fast for him to track. The weapons they wielded were far more advanced than anything he had seen from such a small, seemingly insignificant planet. This isn't possible," the commander muttered under his breath. "How are they doing this?" But the answer to his question was something he could never have expected. Earth wasn't relying on overwhelming power or sheer numbers. They had come prepared. They had come ready to fight with everything they had, and with a fierce determination that no one had seen coming. As the battle intensified, it became clear the Council had underestimated Earth in the worst possible way. The war was just beginning, and humanity had already shown the galaxy that they were not to be taken lightly. The Council had thought they were facing an easy target. They were wrong. The first strike had been made, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The battle raged on in the void of space, the once peaceful expanse now a deadly battleground. Earth's fleet, though outnumbered and outgunned by the mighty ships of the Galactic Council, had begun to show its true power. The humans fought with a ferocity and precision that sent shockwaves through the ranks of the Council's commanders. Each strike, each maneuver, was calculated to exploit the slightest weakness, and every ship in Earth's fleet was proving its worth. General Lara Michaels stood at the command center of Earth's flagship, watching the battle unfold on the massive screens before her. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but her eyes never wavered. She had been through countless campaigns before, but nothing quite like this. The Council had thought they were invincible, and now, one by one, their ships were being crippled by Earth's relentless assault. "Report," she barked, her voice sharp as she scanned the data on her screen. "General," the officer at the communications station responded quickly. "We've disabled 3 of their dreadnoughts, but they're regrouping. They're shifting into a more defensive formation." Lara's jaw tightened. The Council was learning. They were adapting, and soon they would make the necessary adjustments to turn the tide. But it wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. "Have the fleet break formation," Lara ordered. "Give them the illusion of a weakness. We'll lure them into range of the second wave." The officer nodded, quickly transmitting the orders to the rest of the fleet. Earth's ships, once moving with precision, now scattered, appearing disorganized, almost as if they were retreating. The Council's ships, eager for the kill, moved in closer, thinking they had gained the upper hand. On board the flagship of the Galactic Council, Commander Varnak, a towering being with dark blue scales and sharp, calculating eyes, was fuming. He had watched as Earth's fleet had decimated his ships one by one, and he could not fathom how they had done it. His forces were supposed to crush these humans with ease. They had superior technology, overwhelming numbers, and centuries of experience. Yet, here they were, in a deadlock with a species they had underestimated. "What is happening?" Varnak growled, turning to his subordinates. "Why haven't we finished them off?" One of his officers, a slender alien with translucent skin, spoke hesitantly. "Commander, Earth's ships are not following standard combat protocols. They're unpredictable, almost chaotic, but it's working. We can't anticipate their movements." Varnak clenched his fists. "I don't care about their unpredictability. We've already lost too many ships. Order the fleet to launch everything we have left. We'll bombard their forces into submission." As the orders were transmitted across the Council fleet, their ships lined up for a full-scale assault. Massive energy cannons powered up, and long-range missiles were loaded and prepared to strike. They would make sure Earth learned the price of defiance. Meanwhile, back in Earth's command center, Lara watched the Council fleet close in. It was exactly as she had hoped. The Council was taking the bait. "Brace yourselves," she muttered to herself. "It's time to finish this, General." Commander Briggs' voice crackled over the comms. "We've got the enemy in our sights. Second wave is ready to launch." Lara stood tall and gave the order with a sharp nod. "Execute the plan. Now." The second wave of Earth's ships, previously hidden in the shadows, sprang into action. Their weapons systems fired in perfect unison, catching the Council's forces off guard. The first volley of missiles tore through the approaching fleet, striking their larger warships with precision. The Council's ships erupted in explosions, their shields unable to withstand the force of Earth's advanced weaponry. But the humans didn't stop there. As Earth's fleet pressed forward, the battle intensified. The Council's retaliatory fire was heavy, but it was too late. The humans had already begun to inflict serious damage. One by one, the Council's dreadnoughts fell, their massive structures crumbling under the weight of Earth's onslaught. It was an unexpected reversal. The very species that had been so sure of their victory was now fighting for survival. "Keep up the pressure," General Michaels shouted, her voice strong and commanding. "Don't let them regain their footing." The humans were relentless. Their ships darted between the remaining Council vessels with impossible agility, striking fast and disappearing before the enemy could retaliate. Earth's new warships, designed for speed and versatility, were too quick for the Council's more traditional, sluggish vessels. The Council's fleet was a giant lumbering beast, easy to hit and hard to defend. Lara stood firm, watching as the final Council ships fell into chaos. The once proud fleet, thought to be invincible, was now a shattered remnant of its former strength. The Council commanders were scrambling, trying desperately to maintain order, but it was clear they were losing. Earth had turned the tide of battle in a matter of hours. In the midst of the chaos, Varnak stood on the bridge of his flagship, his hands clenched in fury. His fleet was being torn apart, and the humans were responsible. "This cannot be happening," he muttered to himself, staring at the destruction unfolding on the view screen. He had underestimated humanity, and now it was too late to reverse his mistake. With one final, desperate push, Earth's fleet launched the finishing blow. Missiles, laser blasts, and energy waves rained down on the remaining Council ships, and one by one, they began to disintegrate. The Council had never seen anything like it. As the last of the enemy vessels were reduced to space debris, silence fell over the battlefield. Earth's fleet hung in the vast emptiness of space, battered but victorious. The humans had done the impossible. They had not only survived the Council's assault, they had shattered it. Lara Michaels stood tall, looking out at the aftermath. Her mind raced, trying to process everything that had just happened. The battle was over. But it wasn't just a victory for Earth, it was a message to the galaxy. Humanity had crossed a line, and they would never be the same again. "General," Briggs said, his voice filled with awe. "We did it. We won." Lara's eyes narrowed as she took a deep breath. "This is just the beginning. We've shown the Council what we're capable of. But this war isn't over. Not by a long shot." She turned, staring into the vast unknown of space. The galaxy might have thought Earth was weak, but now the universe would know just how wrong they were. The battle had been won, but the war for humanity's place in the stars was only beginning. The victory at the Battle of the Fringe was a moment of triumph for Earth, but it was also a warning. General Lara Michaels knew that the battle had been just the beginning. The Galactic Council had suffered a humiliating defeat, but they were not a species to bow down easily. The fear in their eyes had been evident. Humanity had shown them something they could not ignore. But fear was not enough to prevent the Council from striking back. The silence in the command center was palpable as the officers began to gather around Lara, awaiting her orders. Earth's fleet had emerged victorious, but the cost was high. Several ships had been lost, and many others were heavily damaged. The Council had given them a savage fight, and though the humans had been victorious, they could not afford to be complacent. This was only one battle, and many more lay ahead. "General, the fleet is holding steady," Commander Briggs reported, his face grim as he examined the damage reports. "We've taken losses, but nothing we can't recover from. Our ships are still intact, and the Council's fleet is in full retreat." Lara nodded, her fingers tapping the command chair. "They'll regroup. We can't afford to rest on our laurels. The Council is not going to forget this defeat." The officers around her exchanged uneasy glances. The Galactic Council was a formidable opponent, and their pride would demand retribution. "What's our next move?" one of the senior officers asked. "Do we pursue them? Do we launch another offensive?" Lara paused for a moment, her mind racing. "No," she replied firmly. "We don't pursue. Not yet. We're going to make them think we've retreated. We'll regroup, rebuild our strength, and prepare for their next move. They need to believe that we're vulnerable." Briggs raised an eyebrow. "You want to play possum?" Lara's lips curled into a small smile. "Exactly. If they think we're weakened, they'll let their guard down. And that's when we strike again. This time, we'll be ready for everything they throw at us." The officers fell silent, absorbing her words. They had just defeated a fleet that was far superior in numbers and firepower, and now they were being asked to retreat, to act as though they were beaten. It was a risky move, but Lara's reputation as a strategist was unmatched. For a moment, all was still. Then, the sound of a communication officer's voice filled the room. "General, we've just received a transmission from the Council." Lara's eyes narrowed. "What do they want?" The officer hesitated for a moment before responding. "It's a warning. They want Earth to surrender. The message says that if humanity doesn't bow to the Council, they will wipe out every last human being in the galaxy." A wave of murmurs rippled through the command center. The Council wasn't just angry. They were furious. It was a declaration of war in its purest form. Lara stood up, her fists clenched at her sides. "Let them come. We will never surrender." She turned toward the view screen, where a map of the galaxy glowed, showing the locations of Earth's fleet and the remnants of the Council's forces. The Council thought they could intimidate Earth into submission. But they were wrong. The humans had a fire in their hearts that no one could extinguish. "We've shown them our strength," Lara said, her voice cold and resolute. "And now we show them our resolve." She turned back to face her officers. "Prepare for the next phase. We're not going to wait for them to make the first move. We'll take the fight to them. We will make the galaxy understand that we are no longer weak, no longer prey. We are a force to be reckoned with." As the officers rushed to execute her orders, Lara's mind raced. The message from the Council was nothing more than an attempt to break humanity's spirit, to make them fear for their survival. But fear would not control them. Fear had been their enemy for far too long, and now humanity was going to turn that fear against the Council. The battle lines had been drawn, but the war was far from over. Days passed as Earth's fleet repaired and regrouped, its resolve steeled by the message of defiance they had received. The Council was not one to back down, and their thirst for revenge would be an ever-present threat. But Lara Michaels and her fleet were not the type to yield under pressure. They had a message to send, and they would send it loud and clear. The calm before the storm had ended, and now the storm would come. "We're ready," Briggs said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "Our ships are repaired, and the new weapons are online." Lara looked at the tactical display in front of her. "Good. We'll need everything we have. Our first target will be their supply routes. If we can cripple their resources, we can bleed them dry. No fleet can fight without supplies." "Understood," Briggs replied. Lara gave a final nod. "Initiate Phase 2. Let's show them what happens when you make the mistake of underestimating humanity." The next few days saw Earth's fleet move with precision and ferocity, striking at Council supply lines across the galaxy. Massive supply convoys, filled with essential resources, were ambushed and destroyed, and military outposts were leveled in surprise attacks. The Council, stretched thin by their own offensive, had no choice but to divert resources to these new threats, which only made them weaker and more vulnerable. The human strategy was simple but effective: hit hard, hit fast, and then disappear into the shadows. The Council was left scrambling, trying to maintain control of their territory while facing a relentless and unpredictable enemy. But Lara knew this was just the beginning. The real fight, the fight for Earth's survival, had yet to come. The Galactic Council would not stop until they had crushed humanity, and they had the resources and power to do it. But Lara also knew that the Council's greatest weakness was their underestimation of humanity. The galaxy had thought Earth was nothing more than a small, insignificant planet. Now it was time for the Council to understand the true power of the species they had so casually dismissed. Lara Michaels was determined to show them that humanity had no intention of going quietly into the dark. They had stood up once, and they would do it again. The war was far from over, but humanity had already taken its first steps on the path to victory. And the Council would soon learn that they had made the greatest mistake of their existence by challenging Earth. The days following the destruction of the Council's supply lines were tense, filled with an unspoken understanding that the next steps would determine the outcome of the war. General Lara Michaels had anticipated the Council's retaliation, but even she was surprised at how quickly they regrouped. The vast resources of the Council were now being mobilized for a full-scale counterattack, their anger fueling their actions. They were no longer underestimating humanity. Now they wanted to crush Earth's will, and they would stop at nothing to do so. Lara stood at the center of the command deck, eyes fixed on the holographic display of the galaxy. Earth's fleet was smaller than the Council's, but it was growing stronger every day. The humans had learned to adapt, to fight in ways the Council had not expected. But the Council had something Earth didn't: numbers. Their fleet was vast, stretching across the galaxy, and they were closing in. "General, we've detected their movements," Commander Briggs called out, his voice steady despite the urgency in the air. "The Council is mustering a fleet at the Epsilon Nexus. It's going to be their biggest assault yet." Lara's jaw clenched. The Epsilon Nexus was a key strategic location, a crossroads in space that controlled access to several critical sectors. If the Council took it, they would have a direct path to Earth itself. "We won't let them take it," Lara replied, her voice firm. "Prepare the fleet. We need to hit them before they can amass their full force." Briggs nodded. "We can intercept them on the way to the Nexus. It's risky, but we can catch them off guard." Lara turned back to the tactical display, her mind racing through possible strategies. A direct assault would be too dangerous. The Council's numbers were overwhelming. But if they could break their formation, scatter their ships, they could level the playing field. "Get the secondary fleet into position," she ordered. "We'll engage them at the Tranquil Belt. That should force them to split their forces. Then we hit them hard with everything we have." As the officers scrambled to prepare for the maneuver, Lara couldn't help but feel a gnawing sense of uncertainty. Every decision they made, every move they took, was dangerous. But there was no turning back now. The humans had already made their mark on the galaxy, and now they were going to finish this fight, one way or another. The days leading up to the battle at the Tranquil Belt were filled with anticipation. Earth's fleet moved in perfect coordination, each ship and fighter knowing its role, ready for the fight of their lives. The tension among the crew members was palpable. They had tasted victory, but they also knew that they could lose everything in the blink of an eye. The Council had vast resources, and they would not be easy to defeat. On the eve of the battle, Lara stood alone in her quarters, staring out the window of her ship. She had seen so much death already, too much. But there was no room for doubt. If humanity was to survive, they had to win. "General." Briggs's voice came over the comms, breaking her moment of solitude. "We've completed final checks. We're ready to move out." Lara took a deep breath and turned to face the officer on the screen. "Let's end this." The battle at the Tranquil Belt began at dawn, the stars themselves seeming to tremble as the two fleets clashed in a burst of blinding energy. Earth's ships, sleek and nimble, darted in and out of the vast cloud of debris and shattered ships, striking with pinpoint accuracy before retreating into the chaos. The Council's massive warships, slow but powerful, fired their immense weapons, sending waves of destruction through the space around them. "Target their command ship," Lara ordered, her voice cutting through the noise of the command deck. "If we take out their flagship, the rest of their fleet will fall apart." Her plan was simple but risky. By striking at the heart of the Council's formation, they could disrupt their coordination and scatter their ships. The Council's pride, their overconfidence, had become their greatest weakness. They had underestimated humanity once, and now they would pay for it. "Missiles locked on the command ship," the weapons officer reported. "Firing in 3, 2, 1. The sky lit up as Earth's fleet unleashed a barrage of missiles at the Council flagship. The missiles cut through the void, each one finding its mark as the ship's shields flickered and failed. The flagship's massive hull cracked, and a massive explosion ripped through the center of its core. "Direct hit. They're losing control," the officer shouted. "The flagship is going down." Lara's eyes narrowed. The Council's fleet was falling into disarray. The attack on their flagship had been a success. Now, the humans had the advantage. But the fight was far from over. The Council's remaining ships fought back with renewed desperation, but their movements were no longer as coordinated. Their pride had been shattered, and with it, their strength. "Keep up the pressure," Lara commanded. "We can't let them recover. Focus on their remaining dreadnoughts. Take them out one by one." The battle continued for hours, the darkness of space filled with flashes of light as Earth's fleet systematically destroyed the Council's remaining ships. It was a slow, grinding victory, but a victory nonetheless. One by one, the Council's warships fell, their hulking forms turning to debris and dust in the cold void. But despite their losses, the Council was not finished yet. A small fleet of fighters managed to break through Earth's lines and escaped into deep space, likely to regroup and plan for another assault. "General, we've won," Briggs said, his voice filled with both relief and disbelief. "Their fleet is crippled. The rest are fleeing." Lara stood still for a moment, staring out at the remnants of the battle. The stars, once so distant, now seemed within reach. Earth had struck a powerful blow against the Council, but this was not the end. The Council would never forgive them. This war would continue, and there would be more battles to fight. She turned to face her crew. "We've done what no one thought possible. But the fight isn't over. We've won today, but the war will not end until the Council understands that humanity will not bow down. No matter what happens next, they will know this: Earth is no longer weak." As the remnants of the Council's fleet retreated into the distance, General Lara Michaels knew that the path ahead would be filled with danger. But humanity had proven something in this battle. They were no longer a species to be underestimated. They were ready to fight, to win, and to claim their place in the galaxy.